Morning we read the Tochacha, which Adam did brilliantly. And, every year we say, who should we give this aliyah to? And we have a couple of names. And we usually say, no, let's not do that. And Adam usually takes that aliyah. So I want to thank him for doing that. That's literally taking one for the team, Adam. And you do it in a great way. This week's Torah portion is a very complicated Torah portion for many reasons. And every year, right before Rosh Hashanah, when we read it, I usually bring a list of my favorite Yiddish curses. And I read the Yiddish curses with you, and we all laugh, and, kind of like, may you grow like an onion with your head underground and stuff like that. But I can't do that this week, because this week was really a week of curses. It was a very, very troubling week in the United States, and I will not do anything that trivializes what happened. And I also understand that by doing what I'm about to do, not everyone here is going to be happy with me. I'll tell you what happened to me just on Thursday. I sent a note to the congregation with my thoughts about this horrible murder, assassination of Charlie Kirk, this young man who was brutally taken from this world. And immediately, I got 3 types of responses. Thank you, Rabbi, for sending this. And people complaining that it was not right enough, and people complaining that it was not left enough. And then I knew that I'd hit a nerve, and I hit it right. I can't please everyone, nor can any one of us. But there are truths that are true. And we can be on the right or on the left, but the truth is the truth. And so today, I hope that we all understand that these words are words of Torah, but more than that, because they come from here, are words of truth. The Torah opens with an incredible statement. It's actually not only a statement, it's an action. We get to the land of Israel and we're instructed to bring the first fruits of our land, of our trees, to the Kohen in the temple. And as we bring the fruits and we hand them to the priest, we say to him, ואמרת אליו, הגעתי היום לאדוני אלוהיך, כי באתי אל הארץ אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותינו לתת לנו. I come today in gratitude to God, because I made it to the land that God swore to my forefathers and gave to me. This is the utmost expression of gratitude. We acknowledge that after these 40 years in the wilderness, we got to a place where we never thought we were going to get. And it teaches you 2 things. That you can never be grateful enough, and that no one is entitled to anything. We need to keep acknowledging that in our tradition. And then the Kohen says, ולקח הכהן, the Kohen takes it, והניחו לפני זה מזבח, and he puts the fruits in the altar. And he looks again at the person who brings the fruits, and then he repeats something that you're familiar with from the Haggadah. Arami oved avi vayered Mitzrayma. My father was a wandering Aramean, and he sojourned in Egypt. So in other words, we say, we remember right now who we were. Right now, we are here with fruits in our own land, with our own trees. But look at where we came from. And when you remember where you came from, you actually obliterate any possible feeling of entitlement. In our country, as you probably heard over the last 2 days, in every single possible channel, every possible media, we have sickness. Some people blame it on one thing, some people blame it on the other thing, some people blame it on specific people. But I need to tell you, we are all guilty. Every single one of us. These political assassinations, by the way, are not new in the history and the story of our country. If somebody was capable of assassinating Abraham Lincoln, imagine what we're capable of doing. the fact that it hasn't happened more often is a surprise. Because the rhetoric and the temperature and the insanity that gets repeated day after day on both sides is beyond anything we've ever seen. And by the way, this is not unique to the United States. Remember, some years ago, Shinzo Abe, former Prime Minister of Japan, was assassinated in a country where there's not a single gun in the streets. He was killed with a gun that was printed in a printer, in a plastic printer, 3D. So when someone wants to harm another human being, it's going to happen. We can prepare ourselves, we can take precautions, but the problem is not on how they do it and what were they carrying or what they did it with. The issue is where we find ourselves as a society, where we feel entitled to take a human being's life because we don't agree with him. You know, it's interesting. Many times in my career as a rabbi, I've disagreed with many people. And trust me, people are not shy to tell me. It's okay. But my number one pet peeve about disagreeing is when somebody comes and complains to me, my colleagues, and they say to me, how can you sit with evangelical preachers? How can you have dialogue with them? How can you go to Israel with them? They're super right-wing. They're pro-life. They don't believe in anything we believe, their theology. And my response is always, you know, if you sit with Muslims that are trying to kill us 24/7 for dialogue, why can't I sit with an evangelical preacher? So I was disgusted by even people who attempted to even say that this young man was so right-wing that this was bound to happen. I have to tell you, I didn't know much about Charlie Kirk, except for what I saw in Israeli media. Once in a while, every other month, couple of months, he appeared in Israeli broadcasts. He went to Israel all the time. He supported our people in such a beautiful way. He didn't need to. And by the way, there are people on the right who also do not support Israel, just like there are in the left. But anyone who loves my people is my friend. We can disagree about everything else, about many things. I disagree with my own children and my wife every day. Things can never get out of control the way they did. Let me share with you a midrash that comes from Avot the Rabbi Natan. But before I tell you the midrash, I always have this vision, and I've mentioned this to you before, of how Jews drink wine. You know, I don't know anything about wine. Most of you here do not know anything about wine either. There's a couple that do. But how do Jews drink wine? We go to the restaurant, we go, oh, it's great. Look at the legs. It has body. We have no idea what we're talking about. This was never our thing. We actually boil wine before we drink it. I just saw a website that sells kosher wine where there's a couple of logos for you to tell whether the wine is mevushal or not. If the wine is mevushal, it has a little symbol that is a bottle of wine with a flame on top. I kid you not. So we judge people the same way we judge wine. We have no idea what we're talking about. But we all have an opinion. And we have to keep it to ourselves. And you know, when I sent that email out, people were telling me, well, tell me somebody from the left. Tell me who's inciting violence. Immediately, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 names. Just like in the other side there are. And again, engaging on the game of my anti-Semite is better than your anti-Semite is not something that we should make a sport of. Doesn't conduce to anything positive. Here's the midrash. Havi dan et kol adam leschaf zchut keitzad. Judge every human being according to their merit. How do you do that? So then the midrash tells a story. Hayu shnayim malchim baderech, echad tzadik bechad rasha. Nizamen shnehem davar aveira. There were two people walking on the way on the journey. One was wicked and one was righteous. And both transgressed. Something happened today and they both transgressed. So what was the reaction? The evil one turned to the righteous one and says, yeah, you sinned because you are this and this and that, and you should have been more careful, and this should have happened to you. And the righteous person turns to the wicked one and says, you sinned because you were not capable of overcoming your evil impulse. That's the way it is. It is that simple. We need to give people the benefit of the doubt. We live in a world where the benefit of the doubt absolutely does not exist. And that happens, by the way, you should have seen the emails I got about gun violence. People teaching me about gun violence. I have to tell you, my biggest problem in our country today is social media, not gun violence. Social media is a disease. If you look at what's happening to our children who look at these Instagram videos all day and all night, look at the way the Palestinians got into our society and took over our schools, Instagram and TikTok. That's what we have to be looking at. We are all responsible. I have a Yiddish saying for you today, by the way. Soll beleben Blut auf die Hand von jene was schlagen vor. May blood cling to the hands of those who strike for political gain. Yeah, we invented this. You know why? Because we are always in the receiving end of political violence. Eventually, it gets to us. How did World War I start? How did World War II start? I don't want to burden you with an hour of speaking, but that's a history lesson for us. One of the most sobering moments in my entire life. I was in Israel in the National Archives of the State of Israel. And I was mesmerized by the amount of documents and artifacts that they have in the archives. And we were walking around, and the curator handed me a box, and I opened the box, and there was a gun in the box. So I said, can I touch it? He said, of course. Okay. Any other country in the world, this gun would be under lock and key in a museum or in a vault. I take out the gun and I look at the label, and it says, this is the gun that was used to kill Yitzhak Rabin. I'm holding it in my hands. And I asked him, why do you allow people to touch this? And he said to me, people need to know that we pull the trigger, all of us. That was one of the most sobering moments in my life. Why was Rabin killed? Because of incitement. We admit it. We know it. It's a horrific thing what happened. So again, the United States is not an isolated case. But we are honest enough to admit that it can happen to us anywhere. Why was the temple destroyed in Jerusalem? By the way, we just finished reading the 6th of Torah of Consolation. Why was the temple destroyed in Jerusalem? Because of our own fault. We could have easily said, oh, it was the Romans. Yes, it was the Romans. But without our help, without us fighting each other, it would have not happened. Again, we're honest enough to admit it from generation to generation. And one more thing. We as a people reflect during this time of the year on how we can do better to better ourselves. There's not many traditions that do that every year as a matter of gradual reflection into a date where you're judged by God. And it's a very important thing to do. It's a super important thing to do. You know, one of the things that happens here in the synagogue, especially with religious school, every year, 27 years, every year like clockwork, Rabbi, such and such is not coming to religious school on Mondays. Why should I bring my child if such and such is not coming? And my answer is, you should care more about what your child does than what the other child does. Mind your life, not the life of others. If you want to better the world with your own hands, not by harming others or by talking about others. The number one sign of a coward is when instead of admitting that there's something you could do yourself, you take it out on somebody else and you harm them. That's what happened in our country this week. Lastly, the Torah portion also contains an incredible, incredible scene where God asks us to inscribe blessings in one mountain and curses on another mountain. He juxtaposes blessings and curses, and everyone has to go through the mountains. Ar Gerizim and Ar Eival. Why? There's no more powerful message than that in this Torah portion. Life is a juxtaposition of curses and blessings that we bring upon ourselves. God sends the curses, but whether they materialize or not is up to us. Blessings are abundant, but whether we hold fast to them or not is up to us. And this process of the Torah, of laying them out in plain sight, as a reminder, is extremely, extremely important. So, dear friends, I pray that we do not live through many more weeks like we had last week. I really believe that we can do better as a society. But, like our tradition says, and like this time of the year urges us to do, the fastest way to build a better world is to judge ourselves before judging the person next to us. Shabbat Shalom. Let us please rise. We're going to continue on page